Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode on the Cerebral Cricketer podcast. Today we have a very, very special guest on the show. Antum Naqvi is Zimbabwe's rising batting all-rounder. Born in Belgium, raised in Australia and thriving in Zimbabwe, he scored 140 not out on his first-class debut and is the first triple centurion in Zimbabwean domestic cricket history. He's also a qualified commercial pilot. So welcome to the show, Antum.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and excited to get this underway.
Yeah, so we were discussing offline. We have a very similar background. You sort of lived in Sydney and did schooling there, and I sort of lived in Sydney for a majority of my life as well. So before I talk about that, though, you have a very interesting situation where you were born in Belgium, which is probably a bit foreign for especially someone from a subcontinent background. So do you remember your time in Belgium? And what was the reason for you moving from Belgium to Sydney,
Yeah,
Australia?
like you just said, born in Belgium. My dad moved to Belgium when he was little. I think probably a couple years old. My grandfather, grandmother moved there pretty early on in his childhood. My dad actually grew up playing cricket in the Netherlands. So, I think 1990, oh, maybe 2001 or something. He went to Ipswich to play as a overseas pro in the Great Comp, and I think he fell in love with Australia, and then he's like, "This is the country I want to move to." I mean, uh, I think he was died from the weather in Belgium. Apparently, it was depressing, always raining. So I don't think he enjoyed much of Belgium, and then yeah, just radical change. Just wanted change, so I made his move to Australia and took everyone with him.
That's really interesting. I didn't know about that in terms of your father also playing cricket at a pretty high level. And I actually interviewed quite a few Netherlands players, so that's a bit of familiar territory there. So, in terms of I assume your dad has a big influence on you naturally when it comes to cricket. So I'd like to kind of explore that. Like, how did he help you at a young age when it comes to cricket?
Yeah, definitely he did. It's a bit of a amazing story. I mean, he used to work till what 3:30, 4 o'clock. This is when we were living up in Darwin, and he would come home, pick us up from home, and we'd go straight to the nets. Me and my little brother. I think he would spend hour and a half each on us, just giving us underarms, drop downs. Always in the nets. And this is literally Monday to Friday, every day of the week, from the start of the year to the end of the year. And I can guarantee I think I spent most of my childhood in those nets there.
That's crazy. So, what specific, I guess, in terms of specific training, like what made you gravitate towards batting, and what trainings did your father do when it comes to from on the batting front from a young age?
Well, personally, I was a bit of a rebellion growing up, so a rebellious kid. So, I never focused on the technique and this and that. I just wanted to hit the ball out of the park. And then there was my younger brother, who was complete opposite, and he would solely just focus on, the top hand and the high elbows and the footwork and everything. So, and the funny thing is, we would each get hour and a half. I think I'd probably play about an hour, and then I'd give the other half an hour to my brother just to, train, and I'll be just mucking around somewhere in the background. So, but I think the thing is, it was so much repetition that you eventually like just hitting balls after balls every day for a whole couple of years. You eventually pick up some traits, and then once you realize that, hey, look, I'm actually kind of, enjoying this now. I'm hitting some runs at club level, and then everyone's like kind of around you and, picking you up and like, oh, Antum, wow, nice 50 or nice shots. And then, you get like, you feel confident and you start enjoying the game. And that's how I started enjoying the game as a little kid.
And your brother also plays for in the Zimbabwe domestic scene as well, Awad. So, how was our relationship growing up? Because you just mentioned how he focused more on the technique, and you just wanted to smack the ball. Was there a lot of competition as you're getting trained by your dad and doing those drills?
No, no, there's never been any competition. And that's probably because I was more of a careless character. growing up. So it was like, okay, cool. And I just move on with my time. And as long as I was enjoying my stuff, I was happy. So I didn't really care about who's doing what, or, if he's scoring 100, blah, blah, blah. I just keep to my little bubble and be happy in that space.
Okay, and how do you think, did you guys sort of challenge each other in order to be the best person, or did you always just kind of keep to your bubble? How about like even now, when it comes to your cricket, are you always trying to push each other? Like, what sort of influence do you guys have on each other when it comes to your cricket?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're competitive when we're playing against each other. The funny thing is, I think in the last 15 years, I haven't gotten him out once because we never really played in the same club. We always play for two different clubs. Even when we were growing up, we were playing for rival clubs. So he would be playing for, like, an instance, he would be playing for Pints Cricket Club in Darwin, and I'll be playing for Tracy Village, and then that's even in the Zimbabwe domestic. He's playing for the Matabalin Tuskers, which is in Bulawayo based, and I'm playing for Midwest Rhinos, which is Kwekwe based. And even then, that's our competition, but the competition isn't exactly about runs. It's about me trying to get him out every time, and I still haven't done that.
And in terms of when it comes to you being a spinner and also a batsman, have you always been like an all rounder or batting all rounder from a young age? And in terms of like your dad, did he specifically train you in both sides of batting and bowling?
My dad always took the batting. I mean, he always enjoyed batting more than he didn't really care about the bowling as much growing up. I mean, it was just there, and I grew up as a pacer until I was like, what, maybe 14, 15. One day in the nets, I'm just bowling funny off spinners, having to muck around with my friends. And I think my dad just had a glimpse from the corner of his eyes, and he's like, "Hey, do that again." And I bowled it, and I was enjoying it because when you're mucking around and you're like not doing what you're supposed to be doing, and it's fun, and it was coming out nicely. And he's like, "This is you time to give up on your pace and start bowling spin."
What's interesting is you mentioned you're talking about mucking around and having fun. Do you also try to incorporate that into your current game in the sense that you try to keep it as fun as possible in order to allow you to not overthink about things or not try to stress yourself out about certain situations of the game? Is that what you're constantly also trying to achieve when it comes to your current game? Just having fun, keeping it as simple as possible in order to allow yourself to have the best results?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if I'm not having fun, then there's no point in me playing cricket. So I'm always looking for ways to make it enjoyable. Sometimes it's jokes with your teammates or joking around a bit. But I mean, this profession is so hardcore and mentally tough that you can't just be switched on 24/7 for 7 days a week for 52 weeks. You have to be, you got to find a middle ground. And I mean, a good example for me, during the season, would play a 4-day game, but in between the 4-day games, if we're sitting out in the team tent, we're still, joking around, having a bit of fun. Or when the game is done, we're going to our training camps. It's serious when it needs to be, but then they're also trying to implement a bit of enjoyment, a bit of mucking around in the middle. So that's how I find that's how I enjoy my game.
And did you have any other coach alongside with your dad from the younger days that you learned aspects about cricket from?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've had quite a few coaches I've worked with. Um, uh, I mean, the first one early on was Mickey Arthur when I was living in Perth for, I think we were there for a year, and I was playing for a school called Guildford Grammar, and we were playing against, yeesh, I don't exactly remember that private school's name. It was like a PSA tournament or PSA schools, and I think there's 7 private schools that play each other for the whole cricket season. And at that time, Mickey Arthur was one of the coaches for the team I played against on my debut, and I think I scored about 70 odd. for my school team. And the funny thing is, my brother went up to him and he was like, "Hey, that guy who scored 70, that's my older brother." And then Mickey Arthur was like, "Oh yeah, yeah, he's batting really well. Here's my card. If you ever need a bit of coaching, hit me up." And that's my first, professional coach, you could say. And then I've had many along the way, like the names of Neil DaCosta, the coach of Michael Clark, and Phil Hughes, the late Phil Hughes, Marnus Lovaskakny. He's still around in Sydney, I believe, but that's another coach I've worked with. And then obviously there's been quite a few, like a power hitting coach, Julian Wood. I've been with him since I was 19, so that's been what, 7 years now. So I mean, and there's plenty of coaches in between that as well that have helped my game. It's not just one coach; it's many coaches that have tweaked it and given me ideas, and I found the middle ground for what works with me. And yeah, that's it.
That's a really cool sort of list of people that you worked with. So Mickey Arthur, what age were you at, by the way, when you got some training?
That must have been when I was 13.
Oh, okay, wow. So at that time, he would have coached. Would he have coached like South Africa and did he catch South Africa? But like,
No, this is straight after Australia when he was coach of Australia, and then as soon as he was done coaching Australia, he was coaching in Perth or for the school teams and stuff.
that's really cool. So, what's your biggest learnings you feel that you took away from getting coached by Mickey Arthur?
Um, a lot of it, I just remember. I mean, it's been a while now, 14 years, but I do remember just him on the bowl machine. And there was this specific phrase he would use every time for me. He would say, uh, "Antum, you're too good to get out this way," and it's still stuck in my head. I mean, I don't remember what specific shots or what he was talking about, but when this is what stays in my mind even till now. You're too good to get out. So I mean, I still follow that. There are times where I'll be like, let me see if I can hit him out of the park. And you just get these urges in the middle, like, oh, I want to hit this ball for six, and you get out. And then as soon as I get out, it just clicks every time. Mickey Arthur's quote, "You're too good to get out."
How do you balance? Because even now, when you look at your T20 strike rate, it's on the very higher end of things as well. So when you talked about your urges, like back then when you're trying to hit big and you do get out, how do you balance that with actually, you know, scoring at a high strike rate even right now?
Yeah, I mean, that's the funny thing of it. I mean, T20 or one day cricket, the biggest thing for me has been if I can get through the first 20, 30 balls, then everything just clicks for me. The longer I stay on the crease, the easier it becomes to score, if that makes sense.
Yep. And so, is that a mantra that you've always kind of figured out? Because obviously, batting can be different for many individual batsmen. Perhaps some just need to kind of go from early on, or some needs to like be a bit more calculated in the way that you're talking about, like getting through a X amount of deliveries. But that kind of formula that you're talking about, is that something that's always worked for you from a young age, or is it something you sort of figured out that will help you batting later down the line?
No, this is actually probably clicked in the last 5 years or so. Before that, I mean, I used to like playing cricket in Sydney. I used to bat 8, 9, 10, just because I could bowl off spin. I used to bat down the order, so I could never really show what I had with the bat. And there were days when I was playing for this specific club where everything was against the batsman, and that day I'll be opening out of nowhere. So, I mean, I've also gone through that. But when I was given more consistent opportunities, is when I actually started learning my game.
Yeah, and talking about your, in terms of like you mentioned the 20 to 30 deliveries that you're sort of playing through. What are you trying to actively do in that time? Are you trying to like watch bat onto ball, or are you trying to just actively rotate strike? Like, what's the strategy in that period?
It just depends on the format, but I mean, white ball cricket, T20, I would give myself, I usually bat three, right? And there's this little formula I learned when I was part of the Thunder as an academy player. And this is when I was just coming out of under 19s New South Wales Academy. And I don't remember who exactly said it. Um, I think it might have been Mark Cosgrove who said it at the Thunders or the Strike League. I don't remember exactly where. He said, if I walk in the fifth over, let's say, then I've got 15 balls to myself, and then the rest are for the team. Or if I walk in the 10th over of the game, then I've got 10 balls to myself, then 10 ball, and then whatever comes for the team. If I walk in the 15th over of the game, I've got 5 balls to myself, and then the rest for the team. If that makes sense. So that's kind of my T20 formula that I'm just trying to follow. And then obviously one day I try to give myself at least 20 balls before I start expanding my shots. But there are days that it doesn't take 20. Sometimes it takes 6 balls, and then there's days where it might take you 30 balls. So, but you
That's
just find the middle ground.
It's interesting because I guess I assume like from younger players, growing up in the world of T20 cricket, they don't even think about giving themselves time, quote unquote, right? It's all about trying to even smack from ball one, or that's the kind of mentality people seem to just adopt because that's what they see sometimes on TV. But you're actually talking about like giving time and how much time, and that time obviously differing according to the match situation, which is really fascinating. So, did you have any other advice in that regard when it comes to when to, do the power hitting in what phase of the game? Like, did you have any other sort of tips or suggestions for young cricketers?
Yeah, well, I mean, the power hitting, as soon as you try to force something, 90% of the time it doesn't work. As soon as you're looking to play the big shot, and you're forcing yourself, and when you force yourself, you actually tend to tense up. When you tense up, your movements become slow. If you just let it happen naturally, with a bit of a flowy, you don't have to muscle that ball. You can still time it over the boundary. You don't have to hit it 20 meters over the boundary. You only have to hit it a couple meters over the boundary. So I don't think as youngsters, people don't realize that they can still, a six is a six, no matter if it's just over the boundary or not. You can still time it and just do it at your pace instead of forcing it.
That's really, that's gold advice. So, is it kind of relying on the subconscious to take over and not force it consciously? Would I be correct in saying that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And at what age, I guess, when it comes to trusting the subconscious, when have you sort of implemented that, or when did you learn that and start implementing that and start seeing results?
I mean, it came for me. It never came from like that way. It came from more training based. The more balls I hit, the more shots I practiced, the easier it came to me. The more naturally it came to me is probably the better word. Then everything starts feeling natural. If I practice my pull shots in the game, if I see it, I'm gonna, click and hit my pull shot because I've been training my muscle memory for that pull shot or the cut shot or, hitting inside out. So that's what's really clicked for me when I come to say, going with the flow.
Yeah, that's gold advice. And you mentioned something interesting. I actually haven't seen it online when I was doing the research. Is that you're a Thunder Academy player, and we actually also interviewed Mark Cosgrove. Like at this point in the recording, we haven't released that episode, but by the time this episode is out, we would have released the Mark Cosgrove episode as well. So, what was your experience there being a Thunder Academy player? And I assume that Mark Cosgrove would have been a player at that time. So, and you probably would have.
Um,
Was he part of the
I,
coaching? So,
Shane Bond was the coach at that time, and the academy players we were basically just net bowlers, to be honest. Just put in fancy words that were academy players. Um, but I think Cosgrove was my strike league coach, the Northern Tides coach. That's it. So when I think there still is the strike league up and down when they play it every June, July, something like that. With that 4 franchises, Southern Storm, Northern Tides, and I don't remember the other two names. But he was the coach for my team when we had Jake Fraser McGurk was the captain, and then we had heaps of big bash players. So I mean, that was a good outing. I mean, I learned a lot from that competition.
And what age were you when you were playing that competition?
This would have been 4 years ago, 5 years ago, so 21, 2021. Yeah.
And how's that experience like playing under Jake Fraser McGurk and the likes?
Yeah, it was pretty good. I mean, it was good fun. For them, I think it was more of a training holiday kind of visit up to the northern, part of Australia. It was pretty chill, but it was still professional when it needed to be. So, and it was pretty much after my 19s, that was my other professional setup, which was pretty cool.
And what's interesting is going back to the list of coaches you've worked with. You also mentioned Neil DaCosta. He's a big name, especially in Sydney and in around Australia when it comes to coaching. Like he's coached so many big players. I think Phil Hughes, Labuschagne as well, and many other cricketers as well. So, how long were you coached by him for, and what sort of learnings did you take away from his coaching?
Yeah, I think I started with him when I was 16, 17, I believe. And I was there till 19, 20 before I moved to Adelaide to take my cricketing career further there. With him, it was pretty good. I mean, I used to train maybe twice, 3 times a week with him. Um, but yeah, everything was pretty good. I mean, I can't really say much more. We just really just focused on technical aspects. It was mostly just doing drop downs and facing the ball machines most of the times. But it
And
was pretty good.
and also, you mentioned Phil Hughes and Marnus as well. So, what was that situation like getting trained by them?
Unfortunately, Phil Hughes was not with us anymore. But Marnus used to come, I think maybe a week out of the year and train with Neil, and that was pretty good. This is before Marnus made his debut for Australia. This is when he was still playing for Queensland or just making his way into Queensland, and he actually stayed with us for a week, and it was pretty good to have him at the house as well. But all he did was cricket, cricket, cricket. For me, it was too much cricket. I mean, that Marnus is all about cricket. Wherever you like, you wake up, he's at the breakfast table, and he's with my brother playing mini cricket with like sticks and little cereal bowls and stuff like that. It was always cricket around the house when he was there. So I mean, that was good fun. Solomon Mire used to go to Neil DaCosta as well. We used to watch him as well. And there was quite a few names. Ryan Gibson, who played for New South Wales, uh, and there's a couple of Queenslanders as well in there. I mean, a lot of people used to come to Neil.
What's interesting because having that relationship with Marnus before he made his Australia debut. So, you mentioned how cricket obsessed he is, but was there any other traits or the way he batted that you observed or took from him that is the reason why he was able to be such a good player for Australia?
If there's anything I remember, and this is again, I was 16, 17. I just remember him trying to be a perfectionist. Everything he did, he wanted to be perfect at. If even if it was like slightly off, it would probably annoy him, and he would just hit 1,000 balls a day. He would just keep hitting balls. I think he just loved it.
And you also mentioned Solomon Mire. So I got a quote here because it's available online. Like, your move from Australia to Zimbabwe was a result of advice from former Zimbabwe international Solomon Mire. And Solomon Mire, we've actually had a episode with as well. We had him on the show a few months ago. So Solomon used to come and play in Darwin during the off season. I watched him play growing up at club cricket. So you've known him for 8, 9 years, and he showed you what comes with cricket as being a professional cricketer, and that's how your friendship grew. And also, there's this quote: he felt that I'm ready to move to the next step in cricket, and told me the Rhinos in Zimbabwe were struggling at that time. So I'd like to just kind of hear your thoughts about your relationship with Solomon Mire and how he's sort of helped you along the way.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, this is when I was back in Darwin, 11, 12 years old, training at Marara Cricket Ground, and then you just see big bodybuilded Solomon Mire in the nets doing drop downs and swinging his bat as quick as he could. And I still believe he's got one of the fastest hands in the world. And, as an 11-year-old kid on the side of the net, just watching him just smash balls inside the nets, I mean, it was pretty amazing. And I was like, I remember growing up, I was like, I want to do what he's doing. I want to just hit the ball out of the park. And I believe a year later, he broke the Darwin record for the highest one-day score, where he scored, I think, 200 or 250 runs. And since then, I've always known Solly, and I think I've known Solly for now 14 years, 13 years. So it's been a long time since I've known him.
Yeah, like he was a great guest to have conversation with, and you can tell that apart from like I guess his physical attributes and his fast hands that you're talking about, like he thinks a lot about the game, has a lot to share, and especially in coaching as well. He's obviously teaching many young cricketers like like yourself, coming through, especially from a younger age, coming through the ranks. He's definitely kind of setting the path and helping them along the way. So. What's also interesting, you mentioned another name, Julian Wood, and I'm pretty sure if I'm correct, he's currently the power hitting coach for Bangladesh. Is that the same?
Yeah, yeah, I saw that on his Instagram. I think he was there doing the power hitting camp for the Bangladesh, and before that, I think he was at Sri Lanka. I mean, he's going everywhere in the world, And there's times he'll be in America, he'll be in South Africa. Like he's just everywhere, and the demand is there for power hitting, and I can tell you, he knows what he talks about.
So what's interesting, because when I saw those photos as well, and I think even during the recent Bangladesh versus Netherlands series, he was also I think I saw him on the sidelines, sort of coaching as well. So how long did you work with him for, and what sort of learning did you have? Because when I was watching that, I'm thinking, I wonder what he's actually teaching, because he has this like this rod looking object that he gets the players to hold
Yeah,
and swing. I'm like, what? Why is he using that instead of a cricket bat? What's going on? So I'd like to sort of hear your thoughts about him and what trainings he did under him.
yeah. I mean, the first time I worked with him was when I was in England. When I in my gap year, I decided to play the season in England, and I think we were down the road from him, from his club. And the funny thing is, my brother actually found him online before my first coaching session. My brother actually went to him. I think maybe 6 months before I started with him for a week, and did a full week's training session with him. And then that's how we kind of started to know Julian Wood, and that's when I started training with him. And um, maybe every couple of years, he would do his research. He would get new equipment and new ways of expanding the game. And recently, for last year, he just had that rod looking bat, and it's very heavy weighted, and you have to swing it at a particular way, otherwise it doesn't really. You got to make it like the rod has to like hit the handle and come back twice and stuff like that. And if you don't do it technically correctly and your hand speeds aren't quick, then it doesn't happen. So I mean, it's a good way of trying to understand the technical base and your hand speed and pretty much everything, just aligning your hips and your power coming from the bottom up. So I mean, it's pretty cool concept.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I didn't know about that. Like, I wouldn't have been able to know by just kind of looking at the photos when he's trying to demonstrate. I just think you just swing at any sort of angle, doesn't matter. It's still a rod thing. So, specifically, like when it comes to his methodology, is he kind of incorporating or teaching, like you mentioned, like the hip movement with your type of swing or the angle of swing? Like, what sort of nuances is he imparting, or you learn from him when it comes to your power hitting that also helped your power hitting?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one for me was, just learning that the power comes from the ground up. So it's important where your front foot gets positioned. It's not too wide, it's not too small. Your foot isn't pointing directly at the bowler. And then stuff like that. I mean, your toe and stuff. So it has to be like baseball style. It's a bit incorporated with how baseballers hit the ball, and they set the front foot and then they generate hip thrust. I mean, power from the hip, and then the power goes back up to your shoulders, back into your hands, and then. So I mean, it's pretty cool. and I stick with that. That's what I practice as well. Maybe once, a couple times for when I'm training for white ball cricket. That's how I train as well.
And when it comes to power hitting specifically, like, is there something that you do outside of, I guess, just batting and nets and facing bowling machines that helps you to generate more power? Like, is there specific trainings in the gym, for example, or is it sort of exercises not necessarily tied to the gym that help you sort of have that power hitting game?
Yeah, I mean, I remember just once he put a vest on me, and you put like resistant bands, and you clip them onto the vest at this, particular areas. They've got the clip-ons, and then you like clip it onto the wall, and you're facing side on to where Julian would be to underarm it, and then you'd be practicing just getting your hip to thrust around and your legs to trying to just generate power, and you're practicing that, and you're trying to just keep your core strong the whole time. So I mean that's one of the ways to practice like outside of it.
And when it comes to, because you're playing obviously all three formats, like you're playing the long version, you're playing one days, and also T20 cricket, and you've also played T10, which we'll get into. So how do you balance like these attributes you're talking about, like from the young age, you're sort of learning the technical aspects. You have many coaches, your dad as well, teaching you the sort of technical aspects, and then you're exposing yourself to these ways of power hitting. On top of that, you're expected to have the patience for the long format. So there's obviously different formats require different skill sets, right? Like I mean, there are a few players that can kind of do it all the way through, but sometimes I guess for the general sense, like you need to change your approach in each format. So how do you go about changing your approach and allowing yourself to have the best chance of success in different formats, or do you just keep it the same template in all formats?
No, I definitely don't keep it the same. I mean, I wish I could keep it the same, but no. Um, a good one would be a good example would be when I played the first season here, where we went from 4-day cricket to white ball cricket or T20, the domestic T20. It was easier for me to transition from red ball to T20 only because it's very similar shapes, and all you have to do in wild ball cricket is literally just start expanding or extending your hands, just becoming a bit more free flowed, and then eventually you find your power hitting stuff just before the matches start or during the matches. You eventually find your way. But going from white ball to 4-day, where you're trying to find singles in white ball cricket, and then those same balls in red ball cricket, you could end up nicking because it's moving. So I found it hard to transition from white to red, but I found a way for myself, which was literally just a week before 4-day cricket, just on the sidearm or throwdowns or anything like that, and I'm just forcing myself to just leave as many balls as I can, and all I'm doing is just leaving. Even if it's just hitting my pads, I'm just practicing, just trying not to feel for the ball, and that kind of helped me to go from white to red.
That's really fascinating because I was going to actually talk about your debut century, but since you're talking about leaving the ball and all that, it'd be interesting to talk about in the context of your triple century. So in January 2024, you'd scored 300 off 95 balls, the first triple century in Zimbabwe domestic history, which is a incredible achievement. And what's interesting, I just wanted to focus on is, I guess, the strike rate. You're obviously going at just over 100 strike rate, but right now you're talking about leaving the ball as much as possible. So I guess when people look at that innings, they'll be like, okay, he's going at a decent clip. Where did he exactly leave the ball, right? And you're here talking about leaving the ball. So I'd like to just kind of get your thoughts about that innings in particular, and if you did incorporate that, or did you kind of go into that aggressive mode during that innings? Like, just give us a kind of a breakdown of how you went about that innings.
Yeah, I mean the team Tusk is. I mean, there's always been a bit of rivalry between me and that team. So every time I play Tusk, is I think it's just a different me. It's more of a mental thing for me when I play them. I mean, when I play them, I just want to smash them, and I want to smash them hard. So going just before into that game, I remember actually very specifically a wicket fell. I was batting. I think I was batting four that game, and a wicket fell just before lunch or just after lunch, and I'm walking in, and the drinks boy from the Tuskers team says, "Hey, I'll see you soon," and I think that just clicked me on. I was like, "See you soon." I'm just walking in now, and to be fair, the two Red Bull games before that, I don't think I scored many runs either, so I was a bit of under the pump there as well. And there was a Pakistani fast bowler from Lahore Qalandars that came to Zimbabwe. Each team got one, and it was a good bowler as well. And first ball is just hammered it short, and naturally I've just when I was like I was saying, talking about leaving. First ball I just saw it and I just whacked it like proper, just full on kitchen thrown at it, pull shot, going for four, and everything was just clicking that day. And everything I did turned to gold. So it was, uh, I mean, I don't know how to describe that innings. It just, at the end of the day, I was walking out at 250 not out, and I was like, wow, I didn't even didn't really know what went where kind of thing. And the day just went so quick. I was like, I just realized it's like I'm waking up from a dream and just not remembering the process. So if you ask me anything about the process or anything like that, don't remember any of it. I just went in and everything was clicking, you know, and yeah, it was just one of those days where everything just clicked and everything was, the hands were good, the feet were good. Yeah, just a good day out.
It's interesting that your talking or your recollection of that innings was what happened before the innings, or what you know what I mean, like before you went on to the ground. So I'm just curious. Would you say that moments like that, where that sort of competitiveness within you, or that yeah, that competitiveness within you has like clicked because of, I guess, exchanges that you've had with the opposition, or you also mentioned how there was a bit of rivalry between the opposition, and that kind of clicked you into gear. Would you say those aspects sort of help you to get into the zone, and therefore why you can't like seem to recollect the innings because you're just like so in the zone?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean that's probably spot on. That's the only way to describe all of that. The rivalry, just clicking, competitiveness, just yeah. I mean, I was on, like I was more than on that day.
And in terms of when it comes to your batting, do you try to engage with the opposition while you're batting, or with the fielders? Like especially coming from a Sydney background, right? Like I guess we can understand how ruthless cricket can be, right? Like
Yeah,
like
definitely.
very aggressive. I remember even I had Musa Ahmed on. He's played for Netherlands, and he was saying that he played in Perth, and he was like it was kind of new to him how like tough Aussies are when it comes to cricket. And so having that background in mind, like do you feel that engaging with the oppositions in that way whilst you're batting also gets you into gear? Is that something you actively do, or do you keep in your bubble?
Yeah, I used to do that, but I don't remember who said that. I'll have to find another way because this way of trying to, it's pretty much you're looking for a fight, to be honest. When you're going out and you're looking for something, you're actually more like looking for arguments or like looking for a fight kind of thing. And one thing I learned is that it kind of distracts your teammates as well. So you need to find a middle ground where it doesn't affect your team but it still kind of clicks you on. So I don't really engage like I did for the first two seasons, and I found a middle ground where it's not affecting my teammates, yet I'm still competitive enough to keep going.
Yeah, that's gold advice because sometimes if we just hyperfixate on ourselves, we don't realize obviously it's a team game and we need to, there's a lot of players that don't actually seem to thrive when it comes to very confrontational environment
Yeah,
in general. So it's something to be mindful, especially like obviously you being captain as well. That's something that you definitely have to take into consideration. And also on top of that, like many, I'd say like a skilled, for example, skilled warrior has many different ways of going about things, not just one kind of going about it one dimensionally, if that makes sense. So
yeah.
that's definitely great advice. And so also about your like triple century as well. Were you actively, I think, going back to the talk we had about the subconscious, were you actively trying to let the subconscious take over? So you weren't actively perhaps leaving deliveries that in that particular innings, or were you trying to, or did you just naturally find the middle of the bat throughout that innings?
I mean, that's a solid question. You know, if I try to really recall, maybe in the first 100 runs, there were probably a couple leaves here and there. Or when they took the new ball at 80 overs, I'm sure there would have been quite a few leaves, or maybe towards the end of the day. But most of the times, it was me just trying to connect with the ball.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. And in terms of also what's interesting, like many people, I mean, in terms of like your risk management, like we talked about your approach, like for example, in T20 cricket, 20 to 30 balls, you're giving yourself time. But I also want to ask you in terms of like your tempo when you get to 50 or 100, 150, 200, do you have any specific things that you do? Like, do you change the tempo of your batting when you get to a certain milestone, or do you try to keep it consistent? Like, what's your sort of headspace in those sort of situations?
Um, Obviously, it just depends on the team situation and what the team needs. Is how I'll keep changing my gears. But most of the times, I mean, if I'm close to 100, I usually try to bring up the milestone in one ball. Or, if I'm on 90, I'm not staying there for too long, trying to get it over and done with as quick as possible. And to be fair, it's actually worked for me. I mean, it's not going to work for everyone, but in my case, trying to get it done quickly has worked in my favor. But I'll also eventually will need to find a way to find, to maybe take a bit of time. Sometimes there's just not hitting it as nicely as you want at a certain part of the day. So then you just have to readjust. I mean, you have to remember that it's a game. The bowlers are here to play as well. So you've got to also, they're going to have their time during the day, which you'll have to respect, and you can't just try to pump them down every time.
What's fascinating as well, because you have a lot of learnings and advice that you've taken from different players. Like you went through, we talked about your different coaches you worked with, also with your dad, etc. But then sometimes I'm sure in the world of cricket, there's too much information coming towards you, and sometimes it can be difficult naturally for people. They might feel overwhelmed with that information, or may struggle with filtering the information for what they need. So it's something that I feel like I can, whilst talking to you, like you've already filtered it down. So I'm just curious, like, what's that process been like when it comes to a lot of information heading your way and then taking the right information that helps your game? And who helps you? Do you have someone that helps you to filter out that information in order to allow you to succeed?
Yeah, I mean, um, I can tell you my secret. My secret is my little brother. He's my analyst. Even though he plays cricket professionally, when he sees something, 99.99% of the time he's correct, especially when it comes to my batting, since he's seen me, batting from, when we're little together from backyard cricket to now. He knows everything about my batting. So he's my go-to guy if I'm struggling with anything or he picks up anything. I'm listening to him, and obviously my dad as well, because he's the one who implemented all the techniques he's taught me into me.
Yeah, that's definitely I think helps. Going back to your family and having that support network, I'm sure that that's aided you along the way, along your journey. And so, in terms of What's also interesting, you also mentioned during the triple century, there was that Lahore Qalandars bowler that you had to face. So my question would be like bowlers who had asked the hardest questions, like what specific adjustments did you have to make during that innings?
Um, Again, like I said, when the bowlers are there to bowl as well, you just there are periods where it's the bowler's game and there are periods where it's the batter's game. You just have to find when you just have to know when it's your turn, and you have to find or know when it's their turn. You know that the bowlers are allowed to bowl 10 good overs in a 4 day game. In one day they can bowl a couple of good spells, or you just have to get through it. I mean, if you try to fight fire with fire, especially in red ball cricket, and the and you got to also realize that these are not international wickets; these are domestic first class wickets. So they're not the same as you throwing hands, at the MCG or versus throwing hands at Quakeway Sports Club where the ball's gonna do something. So you just have to find you know your time, and you got to know when it's their time, and you just have to just it's like pushing and pulling. You just got to know when it's your turn.
I, it's what I think is that a lot of in the advent of T20 cricket, right? There's a lot of push when it comes to taking on every bowler, right, or like that baseball style, right? And what you're describing, which I feel is more like having that humility to know when it's not your time, and I think that requires a bit of putting your ego to the side and just kind of playing to the situation. Would you say that's the case, and is that something you had to learn along the way? Because obviously, like you're talking about when you were younger, and naturally when you want to blast everything out of the park, like that comes with the ego. Like you want to put your shoulders up high and do those things, right? But now it's like that humility has set in when it comes to knowing your time and when you can do things and when you have to kind of step back as well. So I'm just curious about that approach as well.
Yeah, no, definitely when it comes to red ball cricket, because you got to remember in red ball cricket, you don't have to make a move as a batsman. You have to let the bowler make his move. So you can still take your time, even if you're striking at 50 for the first 20 overs of the day. I mean, strike rate really shouldn't really matter in first class cricket. At the end of the day, it's the runs. So if you make 100 of 200 rocks, that's what the team needs, because there's going to be someone in the team who's going to be striking 100 naturally anyway, who's going to balance you out. So, but like you said about T20 though, because it's a lot of pushing, again, you have to, you're looking to score runs versus you're looking to play the whole day. So completely different mindsets, completely different way of playing the game.
And here at the Cerebral Cricketer, we try to do our research as we talked about offline as well. And what's interesting, I don't know if many people pick this up, but it seems to be, if my research is correct, in the next league game, you'd hit 108 of 46 balls. So right after your triple century, the next game, you've actually hit another century of 46 balls with a whopping strike rate of 234.78. So if you can confirm that's true, and if so, like how did you go about that innings after your triple century? I'm sure there would have been a lot of hype and adrenaline, and that kind of you're feeding off that sort of milestone, and that allowed you to score that century in such a way.
Yeah, I mean, you've done your research well. Even I didn't remember this 100 because I remember this 4 day game where I scored the triple hundred, and the next like I think I scored it on the third day, and then the fourth day we won, and then on the fifth day, I mean, first class cricket goes for 4 days, right? So on the fifth day, a day after the game finished, played a club game for Alexander CC, and it was a promotion game for them, and they were pretty desperate, they needed to win. So the guys asked for a favor, and the funny thing is, I told them I'll play, but it's a club game. I wanted to bat six and seven, chill on the side and enjoy time with the new friends I made in Harare. And I think we were like 40 for four or something when I walked in. And I was batting with Patrick Rowe, who played one game for Victoria, I believe, a one first class game for Victoria. And yeah, I was seeing the ball like a watermelon still, so I just went down swinging. But when I say swinging, it wasn't slogging. It was still proper cricketing shots, but like it just yeah, it was just there.
So, would you say that that relaxed mindset also contributed to that? Like, you just wanted to chill out, and do you feel that? And this is why I ask this question is because I think it's something that I'm coming to terms with. Especially like recently, I went on some travels. Like, I like to. I'm not any serious cricketer, but I try to play like kind of lower league club park grade games and also like some last LMS last man stands matches as well. And so obviously I want to try to play well. And I realized with some recent travels and stuff, I felt more relaxed and just chill rather than kind of taking it too seriously and putting yourself a bit under pressure. Low players once they sort of relax and come out of that bubble, tend to do well. And so for you in this case, like coming off yourself the back of a triple century, and then you start kicking back, taking it easy. You're obviously still on a high, but then you're still sort of relaxed, and then you come into that situation, and bam, like you're hitting them really well. So is that something you actively try to do? Like just take it chill, take it easy, and find ways to relax even off the field, in order to help you be on your game.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's for me, it's very important, to relax and take my mind off cricket. Unfortunately, I'm not like a cricket nuffy. I have a limit of how much cricket I can take in a day, in a week. So once I'm off the cricket field, I tell my parents, no, we're not talking about cricket at home. Tell my missus, we're not talking about cricket. I tell my friends, if you want to talk about cricket, make it specific, make it short, and then there's just no cricket. So that's how I find my way to relax because during the domestic season you've got training camp, you've got cricket, you play your first class games that go for 4 days. It's all about cricket, and you only get like 2-3 days break in between, and within those 2-3 days, first day is an optional training. Most people go, and then the second day, people are there training. You got your team training, and just cricket, cricket, cricket. So as soon as I'm off the field, I'm trying to just stay away.
Okay, yeah. And what specific things do you do to chill out, like outside of cricket? Like, do you, I don't know, go watch a movie, like chill out in front of TV, or like watch shows, like, or do you, I don't know, do other activities? I don't know, like hang out with mates. Like, what sort of stuff do you get up to chill
Yeah, a
out?
bit of everything. Lately it's just been being with mates, going to the cinema, the night before the game or something like that, or playing a bit of games on the laptop, or just scrolling through TikTok. But I just keep it simple, nothing too extravagant. But lately, I mean, the last 2 seasons, I found that when I go out to like game parks are like open zoos, you could say, without it being a zoo. I mean, it's not confined. It's like a conservative park with animals and stuff, and that's really really helped my game in a way of just relaxing, going out into 4x4 drives into the dirt and stuff like that, into the countryside, watching giraffes, elephants, whatever's in the way, just chilling and watching them. So I mean, that's helped my game, I'd say.
I think your Instagram picture is you with a giraffe, if I'm recalling.
Yeah,
Is that
exactly. Yeah, I do love my nature. I mean, if I get a chance, I'm always out somewhere in the countryside just exploring.
That's amazing. And in terms of obviously you've moved, from Australia to Zimbabwe, and how's that adjustment been like? Like, you mentioned you're hanging out with friends, so you've made a lot of friends and sort of have a close knit sort of friendship circle in Zimbabwe, because a lot of people might struggle with sort of moving to and fro different places and having people to kind of hang out with. That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it makes it easier when everyone here is nice. Everyone's, chill, laid back, so I mean, there's no issue in that way. Everyone is very open, and everyone, just welcomes you in. I mean, if you ever come to Zimbabwe, you'll see that people are very warm and very nice and always welcome.
Yeah, amazing. I would love to like one day kind of visit as well and watch you back perhaps as well. So, I wanted to backtrack a little bit and talk about your debut century. So in January 2023, you've scored 140 of 232 balls in your debut match in Zimbabwe. So what was your emotions like prior to that domestic debut? Like, did you feel any pressure or nerves? And how did you go about approaching that innings as well?
Yeah, definitely nerves. Definitely, uh, definitely nervous and anxious to see how it go against, in a professional circuit again. Um, and yeah, it was. I don't know how to describe it, but yeah, it was very nerve wracking going in. I remember I went in at 6, and I went in at a bad time as well. The batsman before got bumped out, and he was complaining he couldn't see the ball for the last 15 minutes. And eventually, they bowled him a bumper. He had no idea where the ball was, and he got hit on the glove, went straight to the keeper. And when you're next in and you're seeing like the batsman complaining for light, and then you have this guy named Tanaka Chavanga bowling 140 rockets down, and you're like, well, this is going to be interesting. And the first ball I faced, I remember he bowled an absolute rocket, and I've not seen the ball, and it's just skidded off the deck and hit my thigh pad, and I was like to the umpire as well. I was like, "Hey, mate, kind of struggling with the light. It's kind of dark out here." And we went off the field, and we came back the next day, and the funny thing was, the next day when we came on, I wasn't nervous or anxious anymore. Now that I got through that first ball, and it just started like everything was like when I talked about leaving, I really enforced taking my time during that game and really left as much as I could in the first 60 balls instead of 30. I really, really had to stay patient there. And then slowly, got one shot away, and then you take your singles, and then you just keep batting time. I just kept telling myself, bat time, we have an hour before drinks, just keep batting. And naturally, as a batsman, you'll end up scoring runs anyway. I mean, it's your goal to score runs, right? So if you just keep telling yourself, I've got, let me see if I can get through these next 5 overs, you're still going to score runs. It's not negative. Negative is, let me not get out here, let me be not out, or let me make sure that I just hold up one end without scoring any runs. But if you go the other way, or let me just bat here, but with minimum risk, you're still going to end up taking your singles and doubles. And if you're scoring 20 runs an hour, you'll end up at 120 at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's really good advice as well. And did you find yourself after scoring those runs on your debut, like there was more added pressure in the following matches to perform?
No, not really. Then I started feeling comfortable. Started feeling like I belonged here. I belonged at the level, and then the second game, I think I hit back to back hundreds, I believe, and I took the same mindset. I just played patiently. I just focused on batting the hours. Drinks till lunch, lunch till drinks, drinks till tea, until the end of the day, and that's what really worked for me in that debut games for me.
And speaking of your debut, like fast forwarding to August 2024, you'd played for Zimbabwe emerging squad as well for the emerging team. How was that experience like when you found out that you're getting the opportunity to play for the Zimbabwe emerging team? And yeah, what was that experience like being part of that squad?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty amazing news. Zimbabwe emerging. I saw them play the first season, and it's not actually like it's Zimbabwe emerging, but it was actually Zimbabwe A and South Africa emerging slash A. Um, and I mean, it was a pretty cool experience, being a part of the setup, being part of close to a national setup, you could say, because half the players were still national or capped players who had played Test cricket in my team. And in the South Africa emerging, which they said is emerging, they had about 8 guys in that squad who had played for like 40, 50 first class games. And I'm not really sure if you can call that emerging anymore. And yeah, it was a good experience. I think first game I didn't do much, maybe a couple of wickets here and there and 20s or something. Just before that game, I did feel pressure to prove, I've scored runs in domestic. This is the next step. Now, do I belong here? You know, am I good enough for this? And obviously, after the first game, I was a bit down, didn't do what I needed to do. But the funny thing was that there were some good cricket shots in those first two innings, which kind of, when I looked back at it after the game, gave me confidence for the next game. And then when I went out to the next game, I told myself, look, if I can score 20 playing back foot punches for fours and playing straight drives against these blokes, then there's no reason to say I don't belong here. I just need to, again, bat the hours. And the second 4-day game, um, I think it was the first innings where I scored 100 and something, 120 odd
100
runs.
130 and 65 in that second game you scored. And you took a 6 wicket haul that same game as well.
Yeah, so I mean, again, like I said, that just batting the hours just helped me big time in the first innings, and playing ball by ball, waited for my shots, and I remember I only played like 3 shots the whole innings: the back foot punch, the straight drive, and the pull shot. And the pull shots only came after like 80 runs or 70 runs is when I started playing the pull shot, and I only stuck with my drive and my back foot punch for about my first 80 runs there.
And why is that the case? You'd say you restricted your pull shot, for example. Like, what was the approach then when you're batting?
Because we were playing a Buller whale, and Buller whale's known for a bit of a slow, spongy bounce wicket, so it's kind of tough to pull and play cross batted shots on that wicket until you're really, really set, or until you get a bit of a softer ball towards the end of the innings. Then it's a bit easier to pull, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and
So
so
early
that's
on, it's a bit tough.
I guess in general, it would mean that you're specifically thinking about adjustments you'd have to make based on the conditions. Is that something actively, especially in, like, for example, in domestic cricket, that you're trying to do where, this shot you don't play in this certain wicket, or you don't try to play those expansive drives because of the specific pitch? So is that something actively always trying to tinker with when it comes to your batting?
Yeah, definitely, especially in Zimbabwe, where all the grounds play have their own way of characteristics to the wicket. I mean, you got a Bulawayo, it's a slower, spongier bounce, and you come to Harare Sports Club where it's a bit quicker onto the bat, nicer, where you can play those cross batted shots. You got a Kwekwe, which is my home ground, which has got tennis ball bouncy, steep bounce, kicks off, and it becomes hard again to play your cross batted shots. So I mean, you're always looking at what shots these grounds have offered before, like what people have played, what their runs options have been. So yeah,
Because someone might be like, for example, if the pull shot is like the best shot in their game, because of however many trainings from a young age, that's the sort of subconscious kind of taking over. So my question is, how do you balance that kind of subconscious taking over? Because, for example, someone that is so good on the pull shot would want to obviously play the pull shot in any grounded situation, but then what you're describing is, different pitches behave differently, so that you have to make those certain adjustments. So how do you balance that? Because you'd have to kind of, if your subconscious is telling you play the pull shot, then it's like, how do you like stop yourself from doing that, being like, no, because this pitch is not for that right now? Does that make sense? Like, how do you balance
yeah. I
that?
mean, my favorite shot is the pull shot, and so for me to put it away takes a lot of effort. But once you're out in the middle, once you've got the vibe of the game, the feel, the surroundings, and everything, the bowlers, it's actually not that hard to put a shot away, especially if it's your favorite shot, because you can just bring it back later on. You just have to, again, wait for your turn. Wait for your shot to come.
That's also, would you say that the fact that that you're not playing your favorite shot right now is also like, I've got this secret weapon, the back of my head. when I can take it out and really, take advantage of it full throttle when I need to. But right now, like the fact that I'm withholding in this point in time is like, okay, it's gonna get even better soon. Like, does that also happen in the back of your mind in order to accelerate the run rate, for example, or your own strike rate?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you keep your best shot hidden for a while and you take it out of nowhere, kind of surprises everyone, and they're like, "Oh, now he's pulling. We can get him. He's playing cross-batted shots." Yeah, but they don't know that that's a shot you practice most often, and that's more of your bread and butter shot. And now that you've been in there long enough, you have to deserve you have the right to score. If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And so back to the Zimbabwe merging series as well. When it comes to, you mentioned something interesting where it was like, you were seeing if you sort of belong or good enough in for this kind of level, because there's obviously a step up as well. And the South African players that you're versing have a lot of first class experience. Like I think even I was looking through a scorecard, like someone like Cody Yusuf is like playing for South Africa
Yeah.
currently as well. So he was in that team as well. So um, is that something that's a big mental challenge for most cricketers when it comes to that next step? It's like almost a self doubt, right? Because like if you're asking yourself, "Oh, are you good enough?" You sort of, there's that little bit of indecisiveness there. So how do you overcome that?
Um, I mean, for me, it's as soon as I'm out in the middle, that's the only way to overcome it for me. I mean, I'm not sure every cricketer has their own way of dealing with it. But my way is as soon as I'm in that spot, that's and I'm fighting, then that's. I mean, the only way you're gonna know you're good enough is when you're out at it, being thrown out in the deep end and you're fighting for it.
And what mental tools do you use in that point in time when you're batting to make sure that you're in the right shape of mind? Because, like, for example, if someone is doubting their ability, right, it can possibly, like, it's hard to just differentiate that from the actual time you're in the middle, right? So, like, if someone is doubting themselves outside of the game, then when they're going into bat, those thoughts can kind of play in your mind, right? Like, naturally. So, is that something maybe you have to battle with? And what sort of advice do you give for someone? You mentioned like obviously being in the thick of it, but sometimes it's harder for people to just be in the thick of it because it's like in the thick of it, they're still doubting themselves, if that makes sense. So it becomes
Yeah.
hard to get the best version of themselves out in that scenario.
Um, I mean, the only way I would know is your training sessions, you hitting balls. I mean, if you're training for 15 minutes a day and you're going out there to expect 100 after 100, that's maybe one in 100, 10 million. Someone could do that. But and, most cricketers need to be hitting quite a lot of balls. You need to be in the nets for a couple hours, 3 hours of hitting balls, 2 hours of hitting balls. I mean, you as a professional cricketer, it's your job, right? Your job is to play cricket. People work from 9 to 5 at the office, yet some professionals or wannabe professionals want to only give half an hour to the batting, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or something like that, and then expect uh, to be performing. I don't believe it works like that, and that's just my personal view. You always need to give time to your game outside of your matches, and then probably that's the best way of overcoming your mental stuff as well.
Definitely. And in later game as well in that same series, you scored 85 in the one day in a close loss as well. So what was your sort of recollection of that innings, and how did you go about scoring those runs that day?
Yeah, white ball cricket comes a bit easier for me than red ball cricket, and I feel like I remember that innings pretty well. I remember I went in there and it was just rotation of strike for about 10 overs with the partner before I started expanding my shots. So I remember we were like 270 after 35 overs or 38 overs, and there was a part-time offie, and I took him down in that over three fours back to back, and I got greedy there. And I was like, I'm gonna really pump him out of the attack, and got myself out. And I mean, looking back at it, one of the coaches, the national coach who was there, said it was the right mindset. If there's a part time and you think you can take him on, you take him on. But in saying that, we went from 280 to being bowled out for like 310 or something, I believe. And then you're like, afterwards you think about it a bit, like if only I just didn't get too greedy. But then there's also your coach saying it was the right mindset. But then you're like, I put my team in a worse situation. So I remember that innings. It was towards the end. It was a very conflicted mental space. Like if I just stayed a bit more patient, if I took it deeper and stuff like that. I mean, yeah. Even now, I'm still confused about it. I mean, he's also right. You gotta if you've got a chance to score 350, you take it 10 out of 10 times.
Yeah, so that's very fascinating insight there when it comes to, like, it kind of goes back to what I mentioned about filtering information that you get, because obviously you're getting a lot of information, but sometimes, like, even that, like, it's there's no, I wouldn't say there's any clear cut yes or no, to be honest.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
sometimes some things in life in general as well, like there's no clear cut like kind of correct or wrong. If that was that, then life would be so simple, black and white. But even, yeah, like as you said, like logically, like, yeah, it's a part time, you back yourself, all right, let's go for it, let's make the most amount of runs. But then at the same time, obviously in hindsight, your team didn't do as well, and then you're talking about being patient. So I don't know, I guess the only thing we know is that it happened, and it's in the past, and you just gotta, I guess, move on and do the best you can. And I don't know, but yeah, that's very
Yeah,
interesting.
exactly. I mean, that was a tough situation to have, but that also helped my game in the future games, especially in my list A, which was good, especially against, like we'll talk about Canada and Scotland. I mean, that game specifically helped my one day game a lot going into other games.
We'll actually get into that then, because in February 2025, we played in the Zimbabwe A series against Canada. In one of the games, you scored 105 of 73 to guide Zimbabwe to victory. I'm sure that you're probably referring to that because in the previous game, you might have had a close loss in the South Africa emerging side, and now you're scoring 100 to guide your team to victory. So, what was that experience like? How was your mindset at that time? And what do you feel you did right that day to help you score that century?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, we were chasing about 220 that day, and I was batting four. I usually bat three in one day cricket and white ball cricket in general. So that day I was batting four. I went inside the power play, I believe, or just after the power play, and we ended up being 30 for four. And we had a guy named Timson Maruma come in, very experienced, played a lot of games for Zimbabwe, and yeah, again, learning from that last game, that emerging game, and we talked about during that innings. Look, it's tough out here. These guys are on top of us, and we know this is their period. We just have to, fight out their period, so we have the right to have our period afterwards. And I remember correctly, like we we played very minimum risk cricket. And or just to be honest, when I say minimum risk cricket, I think the third ball I tried to hit the left arm orthodox over his head for six. Oh, I did hit him for six, but after that I calmed down a bit. I got my boundary away in the first 10 balls, and then started milking them. And we kept milking them till like the 30th over. I think I eventually got to my 50. We needed about 80 odd runs, and then I was like, you know what? Let me see if I can take it up a notch without being too risky. And I think I was 50 or 50 at the time, and then my next 50 came off about 23 rocks. There was something around about there. So I mean, it was a pretty innings from the emerging helped me develop that innings against the Canada one.
I guess everything happens for a reason. And in terms of the I'm sort of curious to ask you that aggression that you showed, like after you scored that 50, without it being so reckless. So you're not playing like big shots, but you sort of I don't know if the right terminology is called like controlled aggression. Like, how does that look like, and what sort of shots are you playing in that period? Like, you're obviously, I think from the way you've talked about, you're not like actively like trying to belt everything out of the park, but at the same time, you're trying to be a bit more aggressive. So what? How is that? What is that gear exactly, and how do you go about that? And what sort of shots do you play?
Yeah, I mean, I just tried to be a bit more positive after I scored that 50, and it was mostly just everything started flowing naturally, without me thinking I'm going to hit this ball or in this over I'm going to target this many runs. It was more about see ball, hit ball, and hit it where it needed to be hit instead of forcing that ball to go into directions that didn't need to go. If that
Yeah.
makes sense. So it was very flowy. I mean, everything starts clicking. Like I said, once you're in, even in T20 games, after your first couple runs, and then everything starts to flow, and you just have to wait for that moment because it just comes out of nowhere, it clicks, and then you get one boundary away, and then now you're on, and then after the 50, it's just flowy, if that makes sense. And it's still minimum risk if you're hitting dead straight or inside out. If you stick to your shots, it's always minimum risk. If you're expanding your shots and you're playing like the reverse sweep and you don't really play the reverse sweep, then obviously it's a bit reckless.
Yeah, that no, that definitely makes sense. Like, kind of speaks to that conversation we had about subconscious, and I think that's what you're talking about when it comes to being flowy. And I guess what all the things you've discussed today, your game is more, kind of allowing you to know when that period comes, and then everything else sort of facilitates for that period. Trying to maximize rather than because I guess naturally now, in the advent of T20 cricket and stuff, people are trying to force that to come to them from ball one and expecting it to happen. Whereas you're just being like, let it happen organically, and everything you do before then is setting up for that moment as well. And which I found very kind of insightful and interesting because also you kept that momentum. Like in the third game, you scored 86 of 102. So speaking about that flowy state, is that something you tried to also, because you have that, you're from a high from that, previous game also in terms of scoring that century, guiding a team to victory. Did you Was that momentum when you already scored a century? Is the next few games like that? Does that flowy state of mind or that flowy nature that you described does that come a lot earlier in the inning as opposed to later? Does that make sense?
Yeah, to be honest, again, it depends on the wicket you play on. I mean, that first game we played on the very left side of the Harare Sports Club ground, which has different, characteristics to it. Then the third game we played on the very right side and has plays completely different to the very left side. So then you want it to be flowy, but like 80, I think what you said, 85 of 102, just completely different gears in that game again. Again, the situation was a bit different. I think we were low on runs and high on wickets again during that game. But yeah, again, different wicket, different shots, and less boundaries. I believe it was more just rotational strike and just trying to extend the game as long as possible until I got a seed, and then I was happy to walk away.
And speaking about that flowy nature as well, have you had times where you may have been dismissed whilst you're in that flowy nature? And how do you make sense of that, like getting out in that period when you're at your sort of flowy best?
Yeah, I mean, a good example would be the second game in that series against Canada, where I felt flowy, and then all of a sudden I get a full wide one, and I'm trying to just cream it through the covers, and I've edged it straight to first slip. So then I just have to remember that each day is a new day, and I'm not still playing in yesterday's game. And it happened to me in the South Africa emerging when I was 100 knot at the end of the day, and then the very next day, first ball, I see a ball full outside off, and I'm throwing my hands at it again, getting caught at slip. So I think you just have to realize that new days, new innings, you have to start again.
So you never felt that you were being reckless at all when you're in that flowy state. You do feel like you were in that right state of mind to play that right shot, but it's just kind of like that situation or that specific situation of your dismissal is something that is a bit out of your control. So that's how you sort of interpret it, and therefore you're just like you just forget about it. Because some people might second guess. Like why I'm asking the question is that second guessing of like, okay, I'm in my flowy state, and you do get that edge, and then you sort of doubt yourself, like, oh, should I have even played that shot, or was that even the right shot to play? So you never really think about that decision making aspect when you're in that flowy state. You just kind of move on to the
Yeah,
next
you
thing.
just go with it. You see ball, you hit ball, kind of mode.
Yep, that makes sense. Yeah, for sure. And I know also you mentioned briefly like there was a Scotland tour of Zimbabwe where you played for Zimbabwe A. And what's really fascinating about this series as well is that you actually scored a duck in the first game, and then I
Yeah,
think the next game he scored literally 158 of 110 balls, which is pretty amazing and impressive. So, yeah, what was it like? Like, I'm just curious about the kind of psychological state of mind. Like, I'm sure, this is, good series. And I saw like likes of George Munsey was playing as well. It's a very established gun international cricketer, and here you are, first game you get a duck, and that must make you feel a certain way, I'm sure, or maybe it didn't, I don't know. And then in the next game you're scoring 158. Like that's pretty incredible. So walk us through that period there.
yeah. I mean, our season finished, and I was actually back home in Sydney, and then the Scotland series came out of a bit out of the blue. It was all last minute, and I believe I arrived maybe 28 hours before the first game, or 24 hours before the first game. So, and coming from Sydney all the way to Harare is a journey and a half. So I was, yeah, it was a tough. That first game for me was a tough one mentally because I was tired. My body was tired. Mentally, I was there, but my body wasn't there. If that makes sense. And I just walked in, and I think I faced the first ball, and I'm like, now I face this first ball. If I get this ball again, I'm going to try hit him over the top, and I've hit it straight to mid-off's throat. And then we had 24 hours break, and I took the coach to the nets the next day. We had some throwdowns. I went back to the basics, just hitting balls, getting my feet moving again, getting my hands back to the right places. And then the second game came, and chasing 358, 348, 358, and first time ever chasing a score like that. And in my head, I'm like, wow, this game is pretty much out of our hands. So I remember I walked in and I was batting with Kian Blignot. His dad, I don't remember his first name, but his dad played for Zimbabwe, a pretty big cricketer. And he was a bit. You could see on his face, it's like and that was his debut list day game. And he was like, we're chasing 350. We don't have many runs on the board. What do we do? And me trying to, I played enough cricket to say, look, and it was more just speaking out loud to myself at the same time. And it was, let's try to just get set, let's try to take it deep, and let's not try to force anything early on. Let them just bowl to us, just wait for your ball. And the funny thing is, speaking it out loudly, it went back into me as well when I was batting, when I was telling myself, look, take your time. There's going to be an opportunity later in the innings. Just, calm down, bat with Kian, take your time, play your strong shots, play strong ground shots, hard ground shots. And, first 12 balls, nothing was there, good bowling, no runs. And then out of nowhere, three consecutive boundaries, back foot punch, a straight drive, and a little turnover shot. and then everything just started clicking. Then the rotation of strike. He had the left arm orthodox. What's his name? Uh, Wyatt, Daniel Wyatt, I believe.
Oh,
And yeah, I think that was him. He's played he's played a lot of international and T20 leagues and this and that, and very experienced bowler. And I remember the first ball I faced against him, pitched on middle, ragged to close to first slip, you could say. And I'm like, shite. How are we going to chase 350 when it's turning this much? But in the back of my head, like back of my mind, I was like, just wait for the ball to get a bit softer. It's only doing it because there's a bit of grip, the ball's hard, the bit of seam, it's gripping. And I mean, to be fair, long story short, I just kept telling myself, just take your time, take your time. Your time is going to come. And I think I was 50 off, again, run a ball 50 or 50 off 60, something like that. And I was batting with the captain, Roy, at that time. And I was like, Roy, we need 200 runs in 20 overs. I think it's time to start, expanding our shots. And once I started expanding my shots, don't think anyone could stop me then. Everything was, I set a base for myself and the team to launch off. And, you can only have 4 out until the 40th over. So we used that very wisely. From the 30th to the 40th, we scored 120 runs or so, where we just kept going at them. We put the pressure back on them. And then the last 10, I think we needed 80 runs. So, I mean, we set the platform, and to be fair, we should have won that game. But yeah, we just kept taking it deep the whole time. And at the end, we only needed 8 of 12. It was unfortunate that we lost 3 wickets at the end. But yeah, just moral of the story, don't panic, take it long, take it deep. You will get the right to score your runs at some point of the game.
yeah, that's an incredible story because this Scotland team was basically, I'd say, very strong Scotland team. Like as I said, George Munsey, Brandon McMullen, Michael Leask, Matthew Cross. Like these all players that play for Scotland on a regular basis, and you being like part of Zimbabwe A, like to be able to score like I think it was 340, chasing 348. That's a huge mammoth achievement to even get that far. And to be and what you're describing, I think there's so many lessons to be learned from that. Is basically, I think underpinning it is picking your moments. I think what I've learned is picking your moments and reading the game, but also I think at the back of that is deep self-belief, that it's like when you it's like I don't know, a blacksmith kind of choosing when to, I don't know, the way that the curvature of whatever his smithing or whatever, it's like there's some precision to it. Like he needs to do something like this in a certain way, and he needs to do something else in a certain way or in a different way. So as a cricketer, it's like I'm sure like you just pick your moments, know when to, you mentioned earlier, like when to pull back a little and when to push forward. But then I think underpinning that is knowing that when it's your time and it's your moment, like your game is so good enough that it can kind of astronomically, your strike rate or whatever will go up astronomically, where you can win the game. And that kind of shows. And yeah, obviously unfortunate, like to lose, especially I think you said you needed 8 of like 10 balls, but I think like getting even that close, 348 is no joke, and to get even that close is a huge effort under pressure chasing. Like that's the epitome of cricket. I think that's probably the toughest time to bat is when you're chasing such a big total, right? Like, batting first is obviously a little easier because you don't have that scoreboard pressure, but I think there's a lot of lessons to learn from then. What else like would you like to share about that innings as well? You feel that you also personally like kind of gave you that confidence.
Again, for me, my innings revolves around rotation of strike. So, if I can keep getting my singles, the boundaries naturally come. As long as I'm not, wasting balls. As long as I keep rotating the strike, even if the boundary doesn't come, it's no biggie. it's just, for me, it's very important to just be at the other end as quick as possible, as much as possible.
And speaking of strike rotation, what is that like mentally? Like, how do you approach that? Like, is there a different mental cue where it's like, okay, just wait it out, or are you even watching it more closer onto your bat and just kind of playing with soft hands? Like, how does that strike rotation look for you? Because it's obviously easier said than done. Or I'm gonna rotate strike, but sometimes the fielders are positioned a certain way, and maybe they come in a bit closer. It becomes a bit difficult. So I'm just curious, like, what is that? It's you see many cricketers, right? Like, they have those gears, like we know, Smith or Joe Root, etc. And so I'm just curious, how does that strike rotation look for you specifically?
Well, I mean, I've got an idea of the wicket. I mean, if the ball pitches there, this is the shot I'm playing. If it's over pitched, I'm trying to whack it out of the park. If it's not there, what's my plan B? Plan B, if it pitches there, this is my gap. If it pitches there, that's my gap. If it goes there, I can slightly push at it, and I know it's not going to be anywhere close to the fielders. It's all about a bit of feet work and a bit of your hands work. And just having an idea of where your strong shots for singles are as well.
Yeah, makes sense. And yeah, like as I said, like with that innings as well, like there's so much to learn, and regarding strike rotation, also regarding picking your moments and having that humility to put your sort of best shot aside, but then rotate the strike, but then pick your moments as well. So many learnings there. And so I wanted to also fast track to there was the Zim Afro T10 series as well, which I actually followed not as closely, but I did watch like the highlights and stuff when it was happening, because there were a few, because I'm from a Bangladeshi background, so I follow Bangladeshi cricketers from time to time, and there was a few that played in that series. I remember like. I know aside from the big names, like I think Rassi, Van der Dussen, etc., in the
Yeah,
your opposition team, they were all there. So those are big names. But for me, it was like, oh, I want to see Anamul Haq and Sabir Rahman. So I watched a
yeah,
bit of that too. So there was a lot of star players, and you're actually in the same team with many superstars yourself as well, like Charith Asalanka, an absolute gun of a batsman. People say he's probably one of the best middle order batsmen currently in the subcontinent. And he's captain as well, and he bowls
yeah.
well.
T20 wonder. Yeah, definitely.
And Kusal Pereira, Adam Milne, Sikandar Raza as well, and Chris Lynn. So you had some superstars. So tell us about, I'm sure you would have, spent time with them and trained with them. And how was that experience like when it comes to playing in that T10 series, or in that tournament, and being with alongside such superstar players as well?
Yeah, I mean, to be part of a franchise team for the first time, like in the T10, never played T10 before, and have no idea how to play T10 before that. So for me, T10 is, I thought it was more about just trying to hit from ball one, and which is pretty funny. It's not. It's still as like a T20 game, except obviously half the overs, but you can still, you still have to rotate the strike. If you're hitting 1, 2 boundaries and over, you're doing pretty good in a T10 game. And it's all about, just make sure your singles, doubles, and then obviously your boundaries are coming and flowing in that in that short format. Yeah, and having such guys like big names was really cool. I mean, I picked their brains mostly related to the T20 and one day side of stuff. I mean, they themselves told me T10 can be a bit of a slogfest. So it's kind of hard for them to teach you anything about it because even they themselves are just going out and just swinging, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And who do you feel has impressed you the most when it comes to that side? Like they were teaching you the side of T10, T20, and one days as well.
Yeah, I mean, in the T10, I played more as a bowler, so everything we talked about was more bowling related stuff, more about change ups. And if the batsman's good at doing sweeps, then you set your fields like this. This is what we do in Sri Lanka, or this is what we do in Dubai and stuff. And maybe you could try that here on these wickets. Sometimes it rags here at certain times of the months and stuff like that. When it came to batting, again, I remember Kusal Pereira once he said, you know, again, just wait for your ball. As soon as you get one shot away, everything just like the door breaks down. If you're like struggling, you're 10 off 10, 15 off 15 in a T20 game. And he said that all you need is literally just one shot, 1 6 or 1 4 away from just hammering it down.
And what's cool is that you're captain with Sikandar Raza as well, and there's been comparisons with you and Sikandar Raza. So tell us a bit more about your time with him and your relationship with him.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as I came to Zimbabwe, I remember Raza took us out for dinner, which was pretty cool. I mean, he didn't know us at the time. He just like, these new guys are here playing domestic in Zimbabwe, and just found my number, shot a message. Hey, look, I'm Sikandar Raza. Nice to meet you. Lovely to have you here. I want to take you out for dinner, meet up with you guys and stuff like that. I mean, that's pretty cool from him for a big name to just reach out to someone who's just debuting in first class cricket. Was pretty cool. And to be fair, our relationship since then has been pretty good. I mean, we talk very often, especially when the domestic season is close by. I think we're on the messages quite a bit.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like having such an experienced player who's played all around the world, and having that relationship with, I'm sure, there's so many things to learn from him. And have you like when you were like sort of training for with him, was there any sort of aspect that you sort of picked up from his game that you've also implemented into yours?
Yeah, I mean, he's a really good hitter of the ball. I mean, he's a very clean striker. So I've taken some of his little bat swing tempos and the way he hits over long off and stuff like that, and how he sets up to certain bowlers and certain way of bowlers who he knows are going to bowl this length and this line, and how he's moving in the crease and stuff like that. That's one of the biggest things I've learned. And when it came to bowling, I just remember him saying one thing: just focus on your length. In T20 cricket, length is gold.
And that's really that's some golden advice as well. And I know in 2024 as well, Zimbabwe played India and you called into that squad for that series. So how was that experience being part of the Zimbabwe squad, and did you also get any chance to meet any of the Indian players as well?
Yeah, I mean, that was a really cool setup to be part of. A debut uh, national call up, you could say, without playing a game, just being part of the squad against such a big team like India, who just recently won the World Cup a couple of weeks before. Even though it was mostly of the younger guys coming through, they were still the champions, and they had to hold up, a certain way of doing things. And yeah, I learned quite a bit watching um, our players bat against them, and then the Indian bowlers, spinners specifically, bowling. I think I remember it was Washington Sundar, Bishnoi, and Abhishek Sharma. But I was mostly focused on how Washington Sundar bowled to us. And like Raza said, length is gold. Washington Sundar did not miss his length wobble. Yes, the lines were different, but the length, every time, the length was perfect. And I got to meet, I met Sanju Samson when I was 14, 15, something like that, when I was living in Darwin, and he was part of the under 19 India team that came to Darwin, and we had him over for dinner. And yeah, he remembered me from there, and we got on nicely during the series. And then uh, I spoke a lot to Khalil Ahmed and Shubman Gill during the whole series, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. And what sort of aspects or things did you talk about with Shubman Gill in particular? Because now he's Indian Test captain, so I'm sure there's a lot of learnings there as well. Being such a high class batsman, like what things did you talk to him about, and what learnings did you take from him?
Um, well, we didn't talk about cricket. It was mostly about just stuff outside of cricket, stuff about Zimbabwe and Harare and this and that, and it wasn't specifically related to cricket. But the way he played during that series, I mean, the way he held the innings together for India for most of the games was, pretty incredible. And to have the responsibility as captain, and we had such a big crowd, a lot of noise there, and he just, I think, 3 out of the 5 games, I'm pretty sure he carried out the team.
And I know you've been so generous with your time. I'll ask a few questions before we wrap up as well. So I can't also gloss over the fact that you basically can fly a plane. So I'm just curious, what made you pursue being a pilot?
Yeah, I mean, I actually grew up with the dream of being an airline pilot, being specifically being a captain of an A380 for Emirates, Qantas, one of the two. I mean, it still is my dream. But growing up, that's what I wanted to be. And cricket was second or third to that. I mean, cricket never really came in until I was 17, is when I really started taking it seriously. So I started flying straight after school. I think it was 18, 19. I got my PPO. And then once I moved to Adelaide to play cricket for 2 seasons, is when I did my commercial license, and I completed it at the age of 22, 21. And because of COVID, I had nothing better to do. So I was, my heads were in the books. So I went through those 7 exams, the commercial exams, pretty quickly, which is pretty handy. I mean, I had enough time on my hands. And then I started finishing my commercial pilot license as well during that time.
That's amazing. And I got maybe two questions regarding this in relation to being a pilot in cricket. Like, have you faced an in-flight emergency or abnormality, and did any lesson from that show up in a clutch game?
Thankfully, no. I've never experienced anything, any emergencies like that. Obviously, when you're training and learning how to fly, you go through the emergencies, but it's obviously not the real deal because you have your instructor next to you the whole time. But by myself, I've never had anything. If anything, maybe twice I've had bad weather. Once at night, where my radar was showing that the weather is so far away, but I could feel it about 100 kilometers before that little thunderstorm, and I decided to just make a U-turn and just land at the nearest strip. But other than that, I've had no issues, thankfully.
And my other question would be, what is one aviation habit you wish more cricketers would adopt, and one cricket habit more pilots could learn from?
That's a solid question. So, I mean, in aviation, it's pretty important to pre-check your flight. You check your plane, you're checking little components of the flaps, your elevators. You're checking the wheels and stuff like that. Especially with the little private planes. Your Cessna's 182s and your Piper Navajos and Chieftains. You really have to really watch each part of them, or not specifically each part, but generally just have a good look at the plane to see if there's anything that could make some troublesome in the air. So maybe you could take that into cricket with, you know, like watching the ball, I guess. Like a pilot is walking around the plane looking for dents or anything, any damage to the plane. Could maybe what use that in cricket as watching the ball. But other than that, I don't know if you can take anything from cricket into pilot. I mean, it's pretty tough. I mean, both need patience. I mean, if you're in the air, you're not doing much, especially in Australia, because it's pretty quiet up there. I mean, if you're in Europe or America where the airspace is busy, then you'll be a bit more hands on. But in Australia, it's not that very handsy.
Okay, yeah, that's brilliant advice as well. And regarding, I had a few questions just on the mental or the strategic side to cricket as well. Is there any specific mantra that you follow in between deliveries when you are batting? Like the example I always talk about is like Saywag. I've seen an interview, he talks about he sings songs in between deliveries, that kind of stuff. And I think Sam when he's watching the ball as well, when the ball is running in, he's saying, where's the ball? You can kind of see him say it as well. With the way his lips move. So I don't know if you had a specific like mantra or specific process that you follow whilst you're batting.
Um, yeah, early on, you could say in the first, half an hour of my batting, or first 15 to half an hour, I usually play around with my gloves, just strapping in, strapping out every ball and just making sure my hands are aligned with the way I need it to be. Like Pujara does at every ball, where like he looks down and makes sure his grip is exactly how he wants it to be. I do that pretty much every ball actually. I do the same. And then the other aspect is I just tell myself, watch the ball. But after the first 15 minutes, I forget saying that because you're so in the zone that you don't need to say it anymore.
And also, people talk about visualization or even before the game meditation, all that sort of psychological tools. Is that something that you also implement or anything like that that you do in order to allow you to get into the best headspace before a game?
Yeah, I mean, the night before, I don't really do anything. I just, chill as much as I can. Don't even think about cricket. But in the morning of the game, a 1 day game, your match starting at 10 o'clock. I'll be there at actually a good one would be during that merging series. Um, I would be there maybe half an hour before everyone, and I'd go out to the center wicket and just stand behind the stumps and just visualize the bowlers I'm going to face today and the length they're most likely to bowl the whole day. And then I'll switch ends for about, I'll face like three balls from each bowler, four balls from each bowler visually. And then I'll go the other side and do the same. But that's about it. I don't do
Yeah.
anything more.
So visualization, like that, what you've just described now, like how long have you been doing it for? Like, did you do it also when you were a young kid, or is that something sort of implemented recently?
No, it's only started in the last 3 years. I mean, since I started playing professionally here, since I started doing it, I think I watched Sean Williams do it once. And then I was like, let me try this. And then I just kept it in my routine the whole time.
And I also wanted to touch on a bit of your captaincy. And before I ask the last few questions, before we wrap up the show, you were like handed the captaincy for the Rhinos in your second year of domestic cricket. It goes to show, the faith that they have in your abilities. And also for the T20 domestic comp, you also won it as the captain for Rhinos, and you led with the first class team. You also led them to the finals. So how's that experience like being captain and that captaincy role, and can it be difficult to juggle that, because obviously that's some added responsibility during the game, having to think about a lot of things, and then whilst you're batting, also being a captain. So how's that experience been like, being captain and taking your team to victory, and how would you describe your captaincy style like, to be like?
Yeah, I mean, the first time I became captain, it was an incredible feeling to lead a first class team out onto the field. But in saying that, during that season, I also had pulled my tricep, so I wasn't bowling. So it was actually kind of easier for me to, pick my bowlers and bowl them when I thought it was the right time to bowl them and stuff like that. Because I feel like when you're an all rounder and a captain, and sometimes can miss, like you give yourself less overs at times, and you can miss certain areas of like when you should have been bowling, but you're like, let me, you don't focus on yourself too much because you're focusing on others the whole time. It's a pretty tough gig, to be honest, and hence why I stopped becoming the first class captain as well. So now I just do the white ball because it's a bit easier and it's less stressful because, like you said, it's a lot to think about, especially over 4 days. And if you bowl and you bat, and then it becomes a bit tough to just juggle everything around. But in saying that, white ball is much easier. You get a gut feeling when you should be bowling or when they should be bowling and stuff like that. So in that sense, it's easier. Plus, it's only 3 hours or 6 hours of just taking a bit of stress, you could say. which is a bit more manageable.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds, I guess you have your periods, similar to like batting, where it can be a lot more, and then sometimes it was a little bit more relaxed as well. So I might ask the final like two questions before I wrap up the show. In terms of bowlers, who's the most challenging bowler you faced, and also who's the best batsman you've seen, like that you've played against, that you're like, wow, like this player is amazing, and there's a lot to learn from him. And also my third one would be which player did you look up to from a young age? I mean, you talked about it briefly, but I'd like to get, yeah, maybe more specific, sort of any figure growing up, like because you would have been obviously young when the likes of Hayden and Langer were playing, so I'm not sure if there were players like that that you looked up to as well from a young age. But yeah, best bowler you faced, best bowler you've seen that you've played against or is a teammate, and also player that you've looked up to from a young age.
Yeah. Well, one that really clicks to mind is um, when I was 15 and I was playing for the NTIS, the Northern Territory Institute of Sport, against some South Australian team or invitational team, and I had Spencer Johnson at the time, fresh from his under 19 something. I mean, it's a while ago. I remember I was opening the bat and I had no idea what I was, who Spencer Johnson was at the time. A 15-year-old kid opening in first grade cricket in Darwin, it's rare. And I remember facing the first ball and it went past me like in within milliseconds. I had no time to react. And I was like, wow, this guy is rapid. So, I mean, that clicks to my mind, Spencer Johnson. But again, I was 15 at the time. But I played him well enough to just see him out in the power play to get out the first ball against the leg spinner, charge him down and hoik it. So he's one of the ones that click in mind. But that's probably because that's when I was young and pace was not seen at that age often. But there's quite a few. I mean, I faced Naseem Shah in Pakistan once or twice. I faced quite a few Pakistani fast bowlers as well. Quite a few in the Sydney grade. There was a guy from Fairfield, Liverpool, when my brother was playing for them. He played Melbourne Stars. He was quick as well. I mean, I faced a lot of challenging bowlers, but to pinpoint one is tough because they're all challenging.
And who did you look up to growing up?
Funny thing is, I looked up to Shoaib Akhtar growing up. I always
That's,
wanted to be a fast bowler.
that's crazy. Yeah, I wouldn't have expected that. In
Yeah,
terms of,
I always looked up to him. I mean, watching pure pace on TV is someone hitting people on their head and hitting ribs, breaking stuff. I'm watching that as a kid. I was like, I want to do that, but like, it wasn't for me. That.
and so you said you faced, is it Naseem Shah?
Yeah, Naseem Shah. I faced, Salman Mirza, who's currently playing for Pakistan now. I mean, I faced quite a few bowlers, but it's hard to just pinpoint one.
So where did you face him? What was the context there?
I think it was during a T20 competition. Uh, yeah, it was a T20 competition. So it was in Asia. I think it was in the Middle East, in Dubai or something like that. It was a T20 competition, and he was there.
Ah, okay, nice. And what would be your batsman that you've seen that you're like, wow, like you played against that was really good and impressed you?
Um, the biggest one that stands out for me is Shane Watson. Bowling to him in the nets and him just smashing you all over the park. Wherever you bowled it, even the good balls went out of the park. I mean, you just watching that guy just like with ease would just hit it out of the park.
And I assume this is the time you were Thunder Academy player, is that?
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, okay, that's amazing. And but yeah, that's basically most of the questions I asked. I know you've been so generous with your time. I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your experiences and your insights. There's so much to benefit from everything you've shared. But I don't know if you had any sort of final words or thoughts you wanted to share before we wrap up the show.
Yeah, I mean, for the kids out there listening, I just prioritize enjoying the game first. There's no point taking stress on at juniors and stuff like that because life has a lot of things to throw at you later when you're an adult. So just take it slow, take it day by day, ball by ball, as you'd say in cricketing terms. Enjoy it first, and then the rest comes after.
Yeah, definitely. And it's it's something that people may forget because of, especially you would know like how competitive, especially like in the being part of the Sydney setup or within the Australian competition, like it's very cutthroat, it's very competitive, and especially comes with the sledging and all that. It can be pretty full on, and you sort of forget about just having fun and all that. So very key ingredient that I guess. Is required, I can imagine, when it comes to even playing at the top level. So thank you so much for your time. And if
Thank you.
listeners wanted to check out our previous content, check us out on YouTube. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple iTunes as well. So you can just search up the Cerebral Cricketer and you'll find us there. Make sure you like and subscribe our content. We're on Instagram, so most of our traction has been on Instagram. We make a lot of clips and stuff like that. So give us a follow there on the Cerebral Cricketer. So from our special guest Antum Naqvi, we wish you all the best. This is Tanzim signing off. Thank you very much.